divisive state in society which could be harnessed politically. He decided to advance the elections. The elections, mind you, were not due when they were held in 2001-2, but they were supposed to be held a bit later. So he immediately dissolved the House. Then there was a protracted constitutional conflict between the President of India, APJ Abdul Kalam. I do not want to get into much details, but what I am saying is that Mr. Modi realized that the riots and the division and the anti-Muslim sentiment which had been created in Gujarat because of that, he had an opportunity to harness a Hindu vote bank. That is what he did, and the campaign was possibly one of the most divisive campaigns that you can actually imagine. In his speeches, he would call the camps where the people who had been affected by the riots, where people were staying, he would say that I am going to shut them because refugee camps cannot become baby manufacturing factories. Which means that it fed into this entire myth. Out here are Muslims who are doing nothing but producing babies. This fits into the entire Hindu nationalistic narrative that the Muslims have a well thought out conspiracy of outnumbering Hindus in their own land. Mr. Modi ran this campaign for several months, which is very divisive, and he was able to polarize the voter completely on communal lines, and that is how the BJP was able to come back to power in 2002.
And therefore they actually opened the field for the riots themselves. The riots happen. What is the role that we can give to Narendra Modi when he was chief minister and the riots happened? What did he do? What did he not do? How can we say that he has an implicit role in it?
We cannot say that Mr. Modi instigated the riots of Gujarat in 2002. We can definitely say that Mr. Modi's government in Gujarat at that time had information that there was possibility of violence when Hindu supporters were coming back from Ayodhya after participating in a protest march. When they were returning, there was possibility that there would be violence, so there should have been greater protection and police presence in those stations where there was a significant Muslim population, so that there would not be any clashes between them. But firstly, there wasn't any advanced preparation by the administration. When the violence took place, when the attack took place on the train which was coming back from Ayodhya into Gujarat, and about 59 Hindus were killed, were burned to death in that. Immediately after that, any chief minister should have realized that there was a tinderbox situation. Mr. Modi allowed the dead bodies to be taken in processions to the villages of the people. This actually created a very a very violent situation, because if you take dead bodies of people who have been attacked by what is being understood to be a Muslim mob, obviously Hindus everywhere would get very angry against Muslims wherever they can find them, and that is what happened, that indiscriminately started entering those buildings, those colonies, those areas where Muslims were staying, and started attacking them and killing them. That is how you had such a large number of deaths in Gujarat in 2002, of which the majority of them were Muslims. So I would say that Mr. Modi is complicit in the riots of 2002 in the sense that his government did not act with the alacrity with which it should have. It should have brought in the army much more quicker than what eventually happened, and it should have been much more alert and not allowed processions of dead bodies to be taken through the state.
And this is the moment also. You want water? Because you've been talking.
I think
yeah. This is the time also when Amit Shah come into the pictures. At that time, during the riots, or at least in Gujarat. The Gujarat is the laboratory of the power of Narendra Modi. Can you describe how the figure of Amit Shah is so important, especially today when we see him as so from that time, Amit Shah enters in his life, or in his political life. Can you explain who is Amit Shah at that time and how he grows in together in their political life?
Amit Shah comes from a family of traders. They are Jains, and Jains are traditionally in business and financially well off. He became part of the RSS BJP paraphernalia as a young student through the students' wing of the RSS, which is called the ABVP, the All India Students Federation. That is the way it can be translated in English. He was already a legislator. Sometime by the late 1990s, he had already become a legislator. But he was not a central character in the first government which Mr. Modi formed after he went and assumed charge in October 2001. Mr. Amit Shah was made the Home Minister of the Gujarat state after the victory in 2002. Mr. Amit Shah played a very important role between 2002 and 2007. That is the time when there are a large number of allegations of extrajudicial deaths in Gujarat taking place at that time, in which there were accusations against Mr. Amit Shah that he was complicit in many of these. Nothing really came out of it, and eventually he got, he was acquitted by the various courts. But his opponents keep on saying that the needle of suspicion still points towards him as being the master plotter of all these extrajudicial or custodial killings, which happened in that particular period. He also became a very close confidant of Mr. Modi around the same time, and since then the two of them have been virtually inseparable. When the Congress government in 2008-9 onwards, they started investigations against Mr. Amit Shah, and he was also in jail for some time. At that time, Mr. Modi tried to assist Mr. Amit Shah as much as he could. There was a time when Mr. Amit Shah was not allowed to enter Gujarat, so Mr. Modi would ensure that the family was taken care of, that it was not being harassed, it was comfortable if there was any specific need. So he would look after them. So there is a very close bonding between Mr. Amit Shah and Modi. This is one of the very few, possibly no other political relationship can be found comparable in Indian political history.
Despite his very sulfurous, he's a very controversial figure, and today as a Home Minister, as a Union Home Minister, Amit Shah is seen as a very radical Hindu, even more nationalist Hindu, even more than Narendra Modi. How do we see the influence in terms of politics of Amit Shah in the government of today, considering the extrajudicial accusations and the way that we see Amit Shah as a very radical person? How does he influence, and how does Amit Shah influence the government of today as a Union Home Minister?
It is very difficult to actually say that to what extent that Mr. Amit Shah have influenced Mr. Modi's thinking. But to my understanding, Mr. Amit Shah would not be politically very significant if he does not have the continued support of Mr. Modi. Because Mr. Amit Shah, for all his qualities which are attributed to him, he simply does not have one ability, which is public charisma. Mr. Amit Shah so far has not yet been able to prove himself as a vote catcher anywhere. So I think that till the time Mr. Amit Shah is able to evolve as a public leader, as somebody who can make the crowd go as delirious as Mr. Modi can, till that time Mr. Amit Shah will always be the second in command and efficient Lieutenant General, but not the Chief of Army.
In terms of ideology, does it have an influence?
Well, in terms of ideology, I think that Mr. Modi is very well committed. There cannot be possibly a higher level of commitment to that. I do not think that we can say that the decision on Kashmir was in any way Mr. Amit Shah's and not Mr. Modi's. Mr. Amit Shah would not do anything, to the best of my understanding, if Mr. Modi does not will it. So it's very easy, to play the good cop and the bad cop. I think there are times when it is done very deliberately to show Mr. Modi is slightly more moderate, slightly more acceptable. He's not that, he doesn't get to get his hands dirty, which Amit Shah as Home Minister has to do. He has to do a lot of nasty things which you have to do simply because you're the government. This is very comparable in certain ways to the to the way in which initially it used to be projected. Mr. Advani was the hardliner and Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the moderate. Then it became that Mr. Advani became the moderator.